I'm in the middle of my project of test riding a longer travel 29er, which is a Specialized Stumpjumper. I'm coming into the phase of the project where I'll be comparing a longer travel 29er and a 27.5 trail bike, which is the Giant Trance. Now, Specialized versus Giant, this is like Apple versus Google or Chevy versus Ford, but there's actually a lot of similarities between these bikes. I'll be using a Giant Trance Advanced 27.5 and a Specialized Expert 29er. Both of these bikes are about the same price, in the $5,500 range. Now for this particular video, I'm only going to be looking at the components, at the specs of the bike, and doing a comparison there. Now I do want to mention, if you're interested in the 27.5 version of the Stumpjumper, this video is going to apply to you as well, because the components are the same. The only real difference is the wheel sizes when you look at the different models. So with that, let's go ahead and take a good close-up look at these bikes, again comparing the components, the similarities, and the differences. We'll start the comparison by looking at the frames. So the Giant Trance frame uses a carbon front triangle and aluminum rear triangle, whereas the Specialized Stumpjumper frame has carbon both in the front triangle and also in the rear triangle. The geometries differ slightly between these bikes, particularly in the head angle. So the Specialized comes with a 65.5 degree head angle, and that's for the 27.5 version. The 29er is a little bit steeper, but I say that to say that with a 67 degree head angle, the Giant Trance is a little bit steeper head angle in the geometry. It's still fairly slack compared to a cross-country bike, but for a trail bike, 67 degrees is getting a tad on the steep side. The chain stays are about the same, 435 millimeters on the Giant Trance, and if you look at the 27.5 version of the Specialized, the chain stays are a couple millimeters shorter. And the reach on the bikes is about the same. However, the Giant uses a 50 millimeter stem and the Specialized uses a 40 millimeter stem, and you can actually feel that. If you jump between the bikes, you feel like you're reaching out a little bit more when you're riding the Giant. Suspension design is where you'll see the most differences between the two frames. Giant uses their Maestro suspension, which they call a floating pivot. I compare it to the likes of Santa Cruz Virtual Pivot. And the way that Maestro works is when you put tension on the chain, that is when you're pedaling, it'll stiffen up the suspension a little bit so that you get a pedaling platform, but it still releases very well when you hit a bump. The nice thing about Maestro is when you stop pedaling, the suspension is fully active. So when you're going downhill, the suspension is really plush and active. Specialized, on the other hand, uses their FSR design, which has a pivot in the rear, and of course you have the linkages up front. FSR does a really good job of decoupling braking forces and pedaling forces. Now, I'm not really going to go much more into the differences between these two types of suspension, but I do want to say that this particular Stumpjumper has a firmer pedaling platform than other Stumpjumpers that I've ridden in the past. So Specialized has really done a good job redesigning this so that you still have a very active suspension design, but yet you also have a good pedaling platform, which I couldn't say about some of the older FSR bikes that I've ridden. Now, that being said, I do feel like the Specialized is less plush when you're going downhill. So the mid-stroke's a little bit firmer, which some people may like. Some people may prefer one that's a little more active. I think it's going to depend more on whether you value going uphill or downhill. Both frames, by the way, come with a protector underneath the down tube, so this rubber protector to protect the carbon. One really nice touch about the Specialized frame is the SWAT box system, and that allows you to store things inside the frame by undoing the cover here, and you can just put a tube, a pump, your tools, your food, or whatever, and that's very unique to the Specialized brand right now. Other than the SWAT box, another nice touch that Specialized has added this year is this special chainstay protector, which has these bumps, these ridges, which is supposed to keep the chain even more silent when you're riding. Moving on to the component comparison, starting with the cockpits. Both bikes come with a riser bar that's 780 wide. Now, the rise on the bar that comes on the Trance is actually a little bit lower than the rise that comes on the Specialized Stumpjumper. However, I do find that the back sweep on both of these bars feels about the same, and like I've said in some of my other videos, I really prefer a riser bar over a flat bar, even on a 29er trail bike. The grips on both of these bikes are very similar. They're both their house brand lock-on grips, which have just one ring to lock on the inside, which I find works very well. Now, since I've had the Giant longer, I've already installed the ESI foam grips, which I'll eventually do on the Specialized Stumpjumper. But like I said, the look and feel of the stock grips that come on the Giant is almost identical to the Specialized. Of course, being a trail bike, both of these come with a dropper seat post, and both of them have the thumb lever underneath the bar, which I really prefer. I do like the feel of the dropper seat post that comes on the Giant a little bit better. It's infinitely adjustable and the rise is really smooth. So when I push the thumb lever of the dropper post on the Trance, I can really modulate how it comes up. So I could do a really slow rise if I just put a little bit of a pressure on the thumb lever, or I can have it come up really quickly if I wanted to. The command post, the dropper seat post on the Specialized, is not infinitely adjustable. There's little notches inside. Also, you cannot regulate how quickly it comes up, so it comes up pretty fast no matter how you push the button. If you get the seat post to come up, it's going to come up that fast. Now, I've already mentioned the stem size, so wrapping up the comparison of the cockpits, the saddle. So this is obviously not the stock saddle. This comes with a Giant brand saddle, which I did not feel all that comfortable, so I added this WTB Silverado. The Specialized Phenom saddle that comes on this bike, on the other hand, I found very comfortable, and I will leave this saddle on this bike. Since both of these bikes are at the same price level, they're both going to come with the same level of components, and that is SRAM Eagle. So the rear derailleur on both of these bikes is the same as is the cassette, so you have the 10 to 50 wide cassette. They both come with the same Truvative cranks. However, the Giant comes with a 32 tooth front chainring, and the Specialized comes with a 30 tooth front chainring. Now you'll notice that Specialized actually uses a chain guide on their bike. Now both are narrow wide front chainrings, so you shouldn't have any problems with the chain coming off the chainring, but Specialized just adds that extra little bit of security with the chain guide. And I've never, by the way, had a chain come off this bike, and I've been riding this one longer than the Specialized. Both of these bikes come with the SRAM GX shifter, and both come with guide brakes. Now the brakes on the Trance are the Guide RS, and the brakes on the Stumpjumper are the Guide Rs. Now the R in the title tells you that the reach is adjustable, so with this little knob, and that is one of the most useful adjustments that I found on a set of brakes. And by the way, both bikes only use one clamp for the rear shifter and the rear brake. Looking at the wheels of the bikes, both of these bikes at this price level come with carbon rims. And I totally prefer carbon rims on a mountain bike because it adds that lateral stiffness, so the bikes are really precise in their cornering. Both of these rims are tubeless ready. They're both house brands, so the Giants are made by Giant and the Specialized Revolves are made by Specialized. Even though the rims and the tires on both bikes come tubeless ready, the Specialized comes installed with tubes, and they do include a valve stem. So if you want to go tubeless, you pull out the tubes, install the included valve stem, add your sealant, the sealant of your choice, because this bike does not come with sealant, and then you would just air them up and you are ready to go tubeless. So the Giant does not come with tubes, and they do include sealant. And so all you have to do is put in the sealant. You don't have to pull out any tubes, so you just put in your sealant, air them up, and you're ready to go. Both of the rims I found have a similar feel on the trail. The main difference is how they lock in the bead. So the Giant rims will lock in the bead of the tire stronger than the Specialized. Now the good part about that is you just have extra confidence that you're not going to burp a tire when you're riding. The downside, of course, is it's harder to get the bead out of the rim. Now I found this bike is better than other bikes that I've used by Giant that have just almost been impossible without a flat blade screwdriver to unseat the bead from the rim. But like I said, this one's a little bit better. Whereas on the Specialized, it's a lot easier to unseat the bead. You can do it with your fingers. With the Giant, you have to use a tire lever or, like I said, even a flat blade screwdriver at times. And by the way, these are not the stock tires, so these are 2.6 tires, and this is a 2018 model. Now the 2019 models do come with 2.6 tires. Both the 29er and the 27.5 version of the Stumpjumper come with 2.6 wide inch tires. And I do want to mention that for aggressive trail riding, I think 2.6 is the Goldilocks size tire. It's not as wide as a Plus tire. I found the Plus was a little bit too wide for my taste, and you get better traction than like a 2.3. And of course, Specialized has their own brand of tire, so you've got the Purgatory in the rear and the Specialized Butcher in the front. And for the past few years, Giant have included Maxxis tires, even though this is a Schwalbe. Like I said, this was not the stock tire. This is just one that I added aftermarket. We'll wrap up this comparison by looking at the suspension. And to me, this is the biggest difference between these two bikes, is the fact that the Specialized Stumpjumper in this price range comes with RockShox, whereas the Giant Trance in this price range comes with Fox. So the rear shock on the Specialized Stumpjumper is the RockShox Deluxe RT3. Like the shock that I'll show you on the Giant, this one has 3 levels of low-speed compression damping. So right there is pretty much locked out. Over here is fully open, and over to the right is the Pro pedal, which I leave it on for most of my trail riding unless I'm going downhill or up a long climb. And of course it has a rebound adjustment as well. The shock on the Giant Trance is the Fox DPX2, so this is a piggyback reservoir shock, which I think is an upgrade. So the DPX2 is a very plush shock, and also it's fairly firm when you adjust the low speed compression. So all the way forward is going to be locked out. There's your Pro pedal, and that's going to be fully open. The fork on the Giant Trance is the Fox 34 Elite. One of the main differences between the performance line of Fox and the top-end factory is the fact that this fork does not come with the Kashima coating. Down here is where you have your rebound setting on this fork, and the low-speed compression is up here. Now, one thing nice about the Fox is that you can adjust the firmness of your low-speed compression in the fully open setting with this black knob. The Stumpjumper comes with the RockShox Pike RC, so it's not the top-end level Pike. But one thing I do like about it is the guide on both the fork and also on the rear shock, so you can set your sag, and you can get the O-ring set just where you want it as far as your sag without having to use a tape measure. Like the Fox, the rebound setting on the Pike is at the bottom of the right fork leg. So that's going to wrap up this video of looking at the component differences of these bikes. Like I said, both of these models are about the same price level, both with SRAM GX Eagle components. And like I mentioned earlier, the suspension, I think, is the biggest differences between these bikes. In terms of value, I feel like these bikes are very equal. I do prefer Fox suspension, and I feel like it's a little bit of an upgrade on the Giant Trance, whereas on the Giant, you do have an aluminum rear triangle compared to the carbon rear triangle on the Specialized. And also, I do think the SWAT box is a great idea and a very nice touch on the Stumpjumper. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you're notified with future videos of these bikes, because I'll be doing some more comparisons. I did a time trial between these two bikes, and I'm going to post that video very soon. And I'll be taking both of these bikes up to the mountains in a few weeks and really putting them through the paces, and I'll talk about the ride differences, and I'll even talk about which bike I prefer. Questions or comments about this video, go ahead and drop those below. Thanks for watching.